Dear Biljana, there was not a moment's hesitation on my part in speaking today on the occasion, Biljana, of your being honored with the European Theatre Prize for New Realities. It is a unique pleasure for me to speak about you. You must listen and you cannot argue with me if the praise gets to be too much. Biljana is one of the most important European authors of my generation. My first contact with her was through her written work, which is fitting for a playwright. It was through her 1997 drama, Family Histories, her second work. At that time, I was the artistic director of the Baracke, a small studio theater in Berlin, and I was very interested in contemporary theater work, and I hope I am still. The best young authors then came from Great Britain: Mark Ravenhill, Martin Crimp, David Harrow, Sarah Kane. Their work had strengths. It was written out of rage at Thatcher's England, and it had something to say. These dramas were not exotic or folkloristic. They had universal meaning and said much of life in Europe after the historical turning point of 1989. They were pieces for which directors and audiences alike were hungry, in which they could see their own life experiences. And we found that the authors' viewpoints as foreigners were particularly valuable. Family Stories was just such a work, but of course it did not come from England. It came from a country which at the time was vaguely called the former Yugoslavia. To be more precise, it came from Belgrade. Belgrade, the city from which the war in Bosnia and Croatia had been waged, Vukovar, Sarajevo, Srebrenica. Belgrade, the capital of the Serbs who had become Europe's new pariahs under the Milosevic regime. But from this city came a new voice, a voice which embodied the young Belgrade and with it the new Serbia. It was this city which in 96 and 97 stood in revolt against the dictator, which despised his neo-nationalism, which rejected his wars and which longed for a different life. This was a new voice of contemporary European drama. By this time, Biljana Srbljanovic had expanded the world and themes of her first piece, Belgrade Trilogy, with the dreams, hopes and traumas of the young emigrants and exiled citizens from Belgrade. Now we saw a society having slipped into a never-ending maelstrom of power politics, egoism, hate and betrayal, violence and counter-violence, where no one could remember when the war had begun and no one knew how it would end. This is not an experience unique to Yugoslavia or former Yugoslavia. This is the dark shadow and the very foundation of our collective European family story. In this piece, Biljana uses an alienating artistic device which is as simple as it is brilliant. In her own words, all the heroes of this piece are children, yet they can age or become younger as needed, or even occasionally change their sex. That shouldn't surprise anyone. The actors, on the other hand, are not children. They are adults who can portray children, who in turn are playing adults. That shouldn't really surprise anyone either. There are plenty of other things which should surprise us. This is a gift for any actor or director. She also elegantly solves the problem of portraying violence on stage and finally expands the Serbian local story into a broad parable on the Europeans' regression into the nationalist excesses of the 20th century. When I finally met her in her own city in Belgrade, I came to understand what fed her self-critical yet courageous consciousness. This city, so gouged by the wounds of history, is populated by extraordinary, generous, and open-minded people and breathes a rebellious, artistic, free spirit. This spirit, in the finest European tradition, continually seeks to protect itself from the whims of whomever its current ruler might be. Our Sunday boat ride on the Danube and the Sava ended at the bridge which had been taken out by the NATO air attacks, and which was now proudly claimed as a preferred bathing spot of the young Belgrade set. People were sunning themselves on the bridge's ruins. Biljana wrote a piece called Supermarket for our theater. In the meantime, I'd become artistic director of the Schaubühne in Berlin. She loves melodrama and its current popular form, the TV soap opera. She had simply taken the material and sharpened it, pushing it in the direction of farce. Over the course of the story, she said, I wanted everyone to screw everyone else, to lie to everyone else, and to hate everyone else. And yet they are all dependent on one another, so everything gets steered together. That's soap opera. Imagine a soap opera as an allegorical farce on life in Western Europe. Leo, the main character, an Eastern European immigrant living somewhere in Western Europe, goes into a time warp. He lives through the same day, the 4th of November 1999, 7 times. Leo must suffer. The other characters collide, falling over one another and forgetting immediately what has happened. They all have their secret sex history with each other. As Biljana put it, this piece was born of the post-emotional and post-sexual era. She uses amnesia to bring the point across on the stage. Her characters never know what they did the day before. Only Leo is cursed with the ability to remember, and he too has a secret. He has invented his identity. He so desperately wanted to be a hero that he pieced together an Eastern European dissident's biography for himself. The play is about the desperately comical attempt to maintain this deception. As he finally relents and is prepared to kill himself, it is through coincidence that he indeed becomes a hero. This is a melodramatic happy ending to an existential battle. The immigrant outsider who wants a new home and acceptance runs and runs like a hamster on a treadmill, faster and faster, without ever arriving in his new secured,
it functions.
Yeah? In his new, secure and recognized identity. This shouldn't surprise anyone either in an era where identity is a brand and a commodity. Now Biljana creates an allegory on the West and the neoliberal fallacies of post-nationalist Europe, and with it, the wish to force the outsider, particularly when he's from the Balkan, into the category of the arcane, irrational warrior. She takes this approach a step further in her continuation of Kafka's novel with the piece America Part 2, which takes place in New York after September 11th. The first casualty, as always, was the truth. The second was the solidarity which was lost between people. Another new war, this time a global one, has no beginning and no end. The dream, by contrast, looked quite different: to be free. But not at the price of a divided society which can be reduced to its only recognizable common denominator, the desire for profit. Even Belgrade dreamed this dream for a time. On October 5th, 2000, Biljana's fight and that of her many friends of her generation, in fact, paid off. The Serbs toppled Milosevic. Today, 10 years after her Belgrade trilogy, The nationalist spell, which she described in the fall, seems to have been broken. Belgrade is now becoming part of the West, and the characters in her plays now have different battles. Against aging in this new world, for example, and against the disappointments and lost hopes. At the same time, they continue to struggle with their past and their repressed hatred and guilt. In the new Serbian survival struggle, it seems now that the war has shifted. It's a battle between the generations. In Grasshoppers, a family dumps its father out on the highway to get rid of him. The blessed visions of belonging to Greater Europe were not supposed to look like this. Then suddenly last year, the old ghost of the past returned. The deceased dictator who died of his own self-pity, as Biljana commented, returned as a corpse from Den Haag, where his fellow Serbs had sent him to stand trial. Once again, she had to raise her voice beyond the theater when Peter Handke couldn't resist proving his own ignorance by traveling to Serbia to attend Milosevic's funeral. As a result, one of his plays were cancelled at the Comédie Française, while in Germany he was to receive none other than the Heinrich Heine Prize. Yet again it fell to Biljana to make the remark that Handke would have been better served by attending the other demonstration taking place in Belgrade at that time, namely the rally of his former opponents and victims, the other Serbia, whose leaders had paid for the dissidents with their lives. Again and again, Biljana has been the voice of this other Serbia, against her will and out of sheer necessity. Her courage knows no vanity. Perhaps that is precisely what distinguishes her from Handke. In any case, she would have been without a doubt the more worthy recipient of the Heinrich Heine Prize, and Handke would have been a wonderful character in the epilogue of Biljana's play The Fall. But now she has no long since drenched beyond her origins to become a voice of the other Europe, a continent which has pointedly wrestled with its identity since the new wars of the new millennium. She's an important voice of my generation in this struggle. Throughout this confrontation, Biljana has described herself as a person and an artist with a broken and insecure identity. And now, in her own words, I've been robbed of my identity and allowed only a face, a physiognomy, a grimace. Like in a Cubist painting, one half of my face is that of a warrior, the other half that of a victim. In a world in which I want to be neither warrior nor victim, I have no identity. What I want is my freedom of speech, and thus I am forced to speak out and to write against war, against violence, against nationalist hatred, against simplistic and prejudiced thinking. In this life, the only life I have, I would like to be able to write about other things. However, in this one life, which is so quickly exhausted, I have no right to do so. In a world in which a continent proud of its culture and civilization allows the people on its fringes to starve and to kill each other, and its only answer is violence, I no longer wish to speak of anything else. And thus my whole life, all my thoughts, every breath of my day, every spoken word, all are directed toward one thing and are present as that one thing, as a voice against everything that rules us. Dear Biljana, I wish you the strength and the courage to stay this voice throughout your whole life.
Thank you, Thomas, for this wonderful speech. You can imagine that after such a great speech, I feel not very comfortable because I have to make some clever questions, and I think the most important things are already said. So I invite you to help me with your questions immediately if you want. If not, I would like to start our conversation with one thing that you said at the beginning of your speech. In some way, we critics like to put authors, and we are very sorry, but it's our way of thinking, in some context, in some groups. And in some way, you linked Biljana's work at the beginning of your speech with the work of other young authors from 90s, especially authors from Great Britain, who were presented out of Britain because you were one of the most important person in presenting them out of Great Britain. So in this comparative analysis, it is always, for me, more interesting to speak about differences than about similarities. So would you like to make some differences between her work and the work of the other authors you staged in that period?
Well, I know I'm completely aware of the fact that it's always very difficult to put writers in a group of a generation with other colleagues, because this happened also to a German writer, which I didn't mention, Marius von Meinberg. When he published his first play, Fireface, all the people said that he was influenced by this wave of new British writers, and he assured me that he didn't know these plays when he wrote Fireface. So I'd say it has to do, in the particular German case, it has to do with the fact that in Germany there was a period of time when the so-called Regietheater became very powerful, very important, and then went on a decline.
Yeah.
So because you saw adaptations of plays, you couldn't call them anymore directing of a play, but I'd say an adaptation. And you only could understand this adaptation of the play if you saw a lot of other plays before, or other productions of the very play. So you couldn't enter a discourse of drama or of aesthetics and of art. And this, of course, for a new generation of people going to theater and feeling the need to make theater was very problematic, because you couldn't enter into this world. And so there was a big need, especially because of the fact that this kind of Regietheater was repeating itself. There was a certain need for plays which tell in a very concrete way, portraying what's happening around us. And that's for sure that the problem which is in the plays of Biljana, which is immigration, am I going to leave the country or not? How can I find an identity outside of the country ruled by a dictatorship? How can I find an identity if I wasn't a dissident? Can I only have an identity if I was a dissident? Am I less worse because I wasn't, and so on and so on. All these questions, of course, don't appear in the British plays, because luckily enough, these people could stay in their country and didn't have a lot of intellectuals or young people having to be forced to leave. And so these plays are dealing other subjects and items, but of course, for me being somebody working in East Berlin, was a lot of Eastern German actors, especially the main character in Supermarket. He was a 45-year-old actor from East Germany. They, of course, do know this problematic, having lived under dictatorship. And of course, these plays may be talk much more to us in Germany than other European countries, because in a way we share some parts of stories.
Yeah. And you've mentioned also at the beginning of your speech that Biljana knows how to describe violence with a lot of elegance, if I quote it correctly.
Well, elegance in the way...
Is there any difference between her and British new playwrights on this?
In this aspect, there's a big difference. Elegant in the way that you have to solve, since drama exists, you have to solve this problem of how to portray violence on stage. And especially here in Greek, you can talk about this. You have this famous Mauerschau, which means you're looking over a wall, and behind the wall there's the battle taking place. And there already they dealt with this problem, how to portray violence on stage, how to talk about it without becoming ridiculous.
Ridiculous, yeah.
And I think, and that's what made, for me, this first knowing of her work so striking. I think this moment of having adult actors playing children who play the stories of their parents is a very fine and very subtle and intelligent way of dealing with this problem. And it's also a bit in this German tradition of epic drama. It could be like a like an idea of Brecht's theater.
Thank you. Now we should, I think, start talking about your work together. I mean, this was Supermarket. Biljana mentioned 2 days ago that she wrote this play particularly for you. So could you explain us how it started, this collaboration? Did you have any concrete demands, and how was this dialectic writer-director?
Well, at that time, this was an idea of the Wiener Festwochen and the Schaubühne to have a co-production. And I have to mention one thing more. What is the power and the strength is, of course, what we might share, Biljana and me, is a certain fascination for pop culture, for glamour, for all the cheesy parts of capitalism, and in the same time feeling something's going wrong, and there should be politics and social life portrayed on stage and realities. And so I think in this particular case, Supermarket, it fit very well together, because it was a very comical, farcical play, very funny, with this repetitive moment that you have to solve from one day to the other the same day, because what happened yesterday didn't happen. And of course, this is a very comical thing. This is very funny for the audience. And at the same time, by telling this story, you can reach a certain tragical point. It needs to be tragical at a certain point, so that it is funny and so that it talks to us. So, and these were some of the points we agreed on. I can remember when I met her in one of the meetings talking about the play, the commission. I was telling her that our company is full of very comical actors. Actually, we don't have any tragical, which is our problem in the Schaubühne. So we should do comedies all the time, because our actors are so much prepared to do these kind of drama. And there are not a lot of, and also there are not a lot of writers who can write in this. So what was the special need, or the question from my side to her, was to write a funny play with a deep content.
Of course, this the structure of this play, Supermarket, is based on this repetitive mechanism that goes on and goes on till the moment when the main character, Leo, decides to destroy his false dossier. And of course, this dramaturgical structure is connected, as you have already told, with this notion of the genre, soap opera. And in your performance, which we saw in Vienna and was performed afterwards in Berlin, the notion of the genre soap opera was pretty underlined in the actor's style of acting in your work. But do you think now, with the distance, that this notion of the genre in this particular place has such an importance? Does this dramaturgical structure could function, you know, a little bit divided from the notion of the genre? For example, in some other productions of this play, the soap opera moment wasn't so stressed as in yours.
Absolutely. I think you can do without stressing this very point. But at that time, I was pretty much fascinated of that idea because a very good friend of mine, Julian Rosefeld, who is a video artist, at that time he made a big exhibition which was called Global Soap. So he asked every Goethe Institute all around the world to send him material from the very country, to send him television soaps.
Soaps, yeah.
So he had material from India, from South America, from North America, from Asia, so from all around the world. And then he put together different bits of all these soap operas, and he put them together in that way that you could see that the canon of how people act in these soap operas are up to the details of how you move your eyes or you turn around and so on and so on.
Especially how do you kiss.
And you kiss, and especially that's one moment which is called sink in. Everybody's doing movies knows it. The moment when you receive a tragical information and then the moment you put your eyes down and go, oh fuck, you know? And this is common for all around the world. So this is a global language, but of course it's also very banal because you only have one iconography of how a story can be told, and this flattens all our storytelling, and it makes also us imitating these emotions. So sometimes in real life, we kind of think that when we get tragical information, for example, Tzaddik doesn't get the prize, I would say, oh fuck. And so we kind of imitate these kind of emotions we know from television. And that's why I was so fascinated about playing with the soap opera thing. And this video artist, Julian de Rosefeld, he was working with me, and we put images from all around the world into this performance.
Yeah, and this video was really great, absolutely. Very important part of the whole performance. And are you surprised with the information statement that we could hear on this same stage 2 days ago? That Biljana, I mean, those were her words, today she does not like this play too much. In some way she thought it wasn't well done.
No, I don't.
No, I'm speaking about the play, about your statement on your play, not on the performance.
I enjoyed doing it, and for me it was a big fun. It was for the company. They loved the play. The actors loved the play. It was very well received by our audience. And for me, and this is also something which is important for me and quality of a play, it had a lot of difficulties staging it. So you really had to struggle with...
like what? What were the difficulties?
For example, this...
For translation, it was I quote, Biljana, it was a great performance made from a shitty play. Thank you. This was for the translation. No, we're continuing.
No, but one of the difficulties was, of course, how to show the audience that this very day is now starting again from the beginning, and you had to be very precise in the repetition of the mise en scène.
Mise en scène, yeah.
Because then audience could see by only moving an arm or something, this is exactly the same way you did it yesterday. And you had to be very precise if you wanted to change something so that they can see in that very moment something is very different.
Different, yeah. Now one anecdote I remember, I mean, I was sitting on the premiere in Vienna with all German critics, and I saw it for the first and hope last time in my life. I mean, the whole audience reacted on the show except this, group of critics. They didn't laugh at all. And because you add one line into the text, when Mali was speaking about his mother and the treatment he had from the part of his mother, you add a line, and I was beaten by Theater heute, with Theater heute, and then there was one critic who laughed on this sentence. I imagine it was a critic of Theater heute, and they didn't.
I'd say he was from Theater der Zeit, probably.
Probably from that side.